Well, good day, our friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion and the beautiful Katie.
Hello.
We are in Hartford, Connecticut, and if you are a fan of Mark Twain's novels, his humor, his crazy life story, you probably know about the house in Hartford. He spent a lot of money putting together kind of a dream home here, and we are here to check it out today. Daze with Jordan the Lion, Katie, and you all. It begins right now. It's one of the rare instances where we're going to do a vlog where we're not going to be able to show you the tour. Normally I don't want to vlog those, but this house, the exterior alone is so amazing, right?
Absolutely.
It was an architectural masterpiece when it was finished. I think a 25-room mansion, and their policy is no photos or video or anything. They have limited postcards. They really want you to come see it in person. So we're going to take the tour and then tell you about it and show you what we can and just give you the whole experience of what they will allow here. Look at that. Handsome Mark Twain in Lego form. Unbelievable. You are the worst.
What? I'm getting a selfie with Mark Twain. Don't judge.
He kind of always had that crazy, wild-haired look and everything about him, so that's the house that we're going to be out there checking out. He actually lived right next to Harriet Beecher Stowe's house. Yeah, they don't want photography inside because of it's all wood and they didn't want that. Plus, he used a lot of Tiffany in there, so it was known as the loveliest home there ever was. They moved in 1874. They lived at the home off and on for 17 years, and he wrote a lot inside here. He said himself that this house had its own heart and soul. Wow. There's the house. Beautiful and majestic. We'll tell you about the tour right after we take it. All right, Katie, we just took the tour. Was it worth it?
It was incredible. I mean, there were so many original pieces that they had in there. They had lots of furniture. I mean, the architecture is amazing. Tiffany glass. They had a big love of animals, so customized wallpaper in almost every room. It's really amazing to see.
He used to call this the most beautiful house in the world, is it?
Oh, definitely.
Now,
up there.
One of the interesting things that I loved about it is the wow factor of walking in the front door. It was stenciled to look like mother of pearl inlay on the walls, and the ceilings and everything was weird geometrically. It's an absolutely amazing place, and if you look at the outside, which we're going to show you and we'll tell you some of the stories, you'll understand how amazing it must be on the inside if it looks this good on the outside. So basically the way they were able to afford this house is that her father, Libby's father, his wife, he was very wealthy, Mr. Langdon, and he actually, when they got married, gave them money to buy into a newspaper. And so he ended up getting very sick and ended up passing away and leaving a lot of money to Libby. So they took that money, and at the time, Samuel Clemens was starting his writing career. He'd gotten off the ground and everything, and so he had a publisher that lived here in Hartford that he used to come visit, and he liked the people, he liked the area, and it was known for being like kind of a hub for writers. So he talked Libby into coming here and building a house. So this is what they built. We're not talking about a freaking hunting chalet here. This thing is amazing. So he had a carriage driver that was actually the highest paid person on the property, and he had a family of 7. So they lived here up on the top floor, and Samuel Clemens' carriage would be down here on the bottom floor. So they told us that he adopted the name Mark Twain because it was kind of a piloting term on the sea for having a safe distance. It was like a unit of measurement. So they ended up building this house, and I think my favorite part of it, you know, you walk in the house and everything just looks amazing. But over here, I think this was probably my favorite. This was the atrium kind of botanical garden area, greenhouse, if you will. They had all kinds of plants, but they also have a beautiful fountain in there. And they said the people that lived here afterward ended up having a pet alligator in there. But if you're in this room and you walk directly inside, that was the kind of like the library area, and Mark Twain used to sit in there and make up stories for his kids. And he had a mantle place in there that he had all kinds of stuff on, and he would incorporate everything on the mantle place into the stories. I thought that was a really unique thing. Especially because they said if he repeated a story, then they would make him start over. And if he didn't incorporate everything into it, they would make him start over. So all the wallpaper, Katie mentioned that, as you go room to room, it was like hand done, hand stenciled, hand painted. I kept going up to all of it and looking at it. You could see the imperfections in it and everything. But Katie, do you remember we saw on the ceilings, especially, he had like all of his interests. It was like
the billiard room was incredible because they had pool cues on the ceiling. He was a big fan of his cigars, so those were on there. So everything about this house really reflected the family, down to the nursery and the little girls' room. It was based on...
they had a fairy tale.
Yes, it was based on a nursery rhyme. And then that one bedroom where the walls were honeycomb, but the ceiling was spider webs.
Yeah.
And it was just beautiful. I mean, it looks like gold leaf, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because it's just immaculate.
Yeah, they spared no expense because Tiffany, who made the Tiffany lamps, was actually who did a lot of the interiors here.
Who was the grandson of Tiffany Jeweler, they also said. So it all comes together.
Yeah, so this is where where the carriage would have come and picked him up at the house up here in the front. And you can tell that everything has been molded, like all the railings and everything have been molded for the house. They said after he had to sell the house because he went bankrupt investing in a typeset machine, but once it was sold, the next family had it for a while with their kids, and then it was sold and it became like a boys' school. And then after that, they were going to tear it down, and one of Harriet Beecher Stowe, whose house is over here, her family member got a group together to buy this place, and then they turned the ground floor, which would have been right in here, into the Mark Twain library, like public library. And then the second and third floor, which the second floor is where the family lived when Mark Twain was here, and the third floor is Mark Twain's guest room for his friends, his billiard room, and his office where they say he wrote. Which I'm confused because I was just in Elmira and they said that he wrote Tom Sawyer there. So in the study that was on the grounds of Quarry Farm. So I'm not sure, but they ended up turning the second and third floor once it was sold and had the Mark Twain library down here. That was a way for them to raise money for the restoration. So the second and third floor were actually apartments that they rented out. Now, Katie, right here, this was the room that they showed us. This was maybe one of my favorites. Do you remember the girls would put their productions on in there?
Yes, they would. That is was it the drawing room?
Yeah, it was like right where we're looking, actually. Katie, you can kind of point out, they had a mirror on this side that the girls, they would pose for dancing and everything. But on the opposite side of where this was of the room, there was an open curtain, and they had photos of them putting on productions of different plays that they had written inside that room, and they would use the mirror to watch themselves in there.
They also had a great story when the neighborhood girls would be sick or they couldn't perform. It wasn't out of the ordinary for Mark Twain to jump in and take over a role.
Absolutely. So if you look up here, when his office was on the third floor, it was originally, he had it on the second floor, but the kids' nursery was right next to it. And so it was so noisy that they ended up turning his office on the second floor into the girls' homeschooling, because since Samuel Clemens' wife, Libby, was very well educated at Elmira College. She taught the girls in their younger days before they went to middle school and high school here in Hartford. So right up on the 3rd floor then becomes his office. You can see the riverboat steering wheels up there, and that's where they kind of claim that he was writing all of his stuff up there. So this was a very beautiful house, very, very beautiful. It's sad that he had to sell it because, you know, I mentioned in other videos how much he was a proponent of equal rights. He practiced it here. Take a look at all the architecture from here. It's just amazing. The inlays and the bricks and just how they did all of this stuff. One thing they did that was really fascinating was they created the staircase. As you go up to the separate floors, they get shorter. So it has a weird feel to it. But yeah, I had mentioned that he practiced what he preached. While he was here, he had a black butler named George, and George had a room here, but George, he actually found at the best hotel here in Hartford called the Allen Hotel, and he was so impressed with George that he hired him to be his butler and to run the house. So he had white servants here, and George was in charge of all of the servants, and then Libby was kind of in charge of George, and she would help run the house aside from whatever George was doing.
And it was at a salary of $300 a year, which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, he had his own room here, had a house for his family, but you know, when the Clemens didn't always live here, they traveled a lot. So that was one of the things they told us on the tour, was that even when the girls entered school, they didn't, when you look at their report cards, they didn't necessarily get great grades because they traveled so much as a family.
Like,
they weren't always
they
here.
They weren't smart, it's that because they were essentially like kind of playing hooky, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, Mark Twain was doing so many speaking engagements that he wanted his family there with him. So that tells you how much he trusted George, that George was the man who would watch after the place. Now, what else is interesting that you wouldn't know to look at it is that they told us that at the time, this would have been right on the river, this house, and they've changed it since. That's actually where the parking lot is where the river would have been, and we'll show you that. But the this also gives you some really great views of the house. His study up here. But yeah, they said that during this time he had a river right out here that he could look at.
It was back in the 40s. They said the Army Corps of Engineers covered it up because it kept flooding.
Right there. There's a parking lot right over there. And that's where his river would have been. So
it's technically underground.
Yeah, the water's technically underground, but for a man who loved to be on the riverboats, you know, he got that experience being here.
And we looked out those windows, so I could imagine how gorgeous that view would be.
They lived here off and on for 17 years when they weren't traveling, but daughter Susie ended up getting meningitis here. I believe it was spinal meningitis, and ended up dying, and they just felt so uncomfortable being in the house after that they never lived here after that. And then, of course, Mark Twain encountered his financial trouble. Sadly, instead of investing in the telephone, which we did see here, they say that Mark Twain had the first home installed telephone. I've read that several times. And that it was because he was friends with Alexander Graham Bell. We saw that phone today on the tour, and they told us he hated it, and that he actually could have invested in it and chose not to. Do you remember why he hated it?
Well, he said that back then a lot of the operators were young boys who weren't necessarily polite.
And it was really staticky.
Staticky and loud, that you could barely hear a connection if someone was on the other line with you.
Yeah, so it's too bad he didn't foresee that it would get cleaned up a little bit, because he could have made a lot of money off that place.
That would have changed things quite a bit.
The tour, I mean, hey, most times I say, gosh, I hate the fact they don't let you film it. At the time they lived here, they tell us that it was pretty much by candlelight. They have like gas lamps, so it wouldn't have been that bright anyway, and they want to keep the wood and everything restored looking like that.
All of that hand-painted wallpaper, I mean, they really do preserve history in here, and the house, even right now, looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure it's not that different than when they lived here.
I don't think that you could really get the vibe from a video the way that we did. I really do think this is one of those few places that you really have to experience for yourself. I liken it to Hearst Castle. It had that same kind of feel, and I can only imagine how proud he was of this place because he came from very humble beginnings, and to get to have his mom and have Libby's mom come out and stay with them in the guest rooms here would have been quite an experience for him.
Yes.
I loved this. I absolutely loved it. It was a $28 tour, I think. Worth every penny. It's an hour. They tell you so much information. They actually tell you a lot about the staff members and how, you know, the girl's nanny was native born German, and so she slept in the room with them, and Samuel Clemens' wife Libby insisted that she talk to the girls in German so that they would be able to speak multiple languages. So just, you know, they were a very educated bunch, and Samuel Clemens loved expanding his children's minds, along with, you know, his wife was very intelligent. So I think this was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, to get to see what someone who had infinite money at that time and could build their dream home, what they did. And it was everything that he would ever talk about. So this room right here was the one we told you about, that he would entertain the girls by telling them stories. And there was a little lounge reclining like couch in there that he used to take naps and read books and everything. So they do have a little museum here. We're going to go in and check out that and see what else they have. But in every room they had a little bit of his personal belongings, and they would tell you what was original and what they got from the family. They were big pieces. I think the one we forgot to talk about was in his bedroom, the most beautiful angel bed I ever saw in my life that they brought from
Italy.
Venice.
Yes.
Yeah, and it had angels all over it, and
Yep, little cherubic little angels.
yeah, and they said the angels you could take off the bedpost and the girls would play with them.
Yeah, they would take them off the bedpost, they would dress them up, take them in the bath, our tour guide said, and if the girls were feeling sick, they would take them to bed with them, but the rule was they had to be returned by the end of the night.
Yeah, and their mother said if the girls had nightmares or anything like that, or something during the day, she would have them go in there and lay in the bed and tell them to have the angels protect them while they slept. So that alone, they say that's like their most prized possession here. That alone I thought was worth seeing. It was just this beautiful black bed that they had taken so many places, but he slept in that bed every night.
And they also grabbed a lot of other pieces. They were saying there were pieces from his Elmira home, there were pieces from the Langdon family, so they went to a lot of trouble to try to keep things that were in the family in the house. So I really do appreciate that, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah, the Langdon house in Elmira's gone, but they do have a lot of the furniture was dressing the guest room here. So I love that. You're right. So even though it's raining, his neighbor was Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. And I want to go over and take a look at her house where she wrote the book. So here's the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, and here was her house. Thank God for her relatives. I guess Hartford was going to demolish Mark Twain's house until her relative came in and raised the money to save it. I'm not sure what their policies are on filming, so I'll look into it and we'll do this another time if they allow it. I just wanted to see the house. Uncle Tom's Cabin was a huge, huge literary piece for its day. There's the other side of the house. It's great. A full belly is little worth where the mind is starved. What a cool little weather vane kind of thing. That's neat. The man with a new idea is a crank until the idea succeeds. Great quote. Always respect your superiors, if you have any. There's no sadder thing than a young pessimist, except an old optimist. There's a Lewis Potter bust of Mark Twain. Here's a letter he signed, Samuel Clemens, S.L. Clemens. So here's the typeset machine that he invested all of his money into. I believe it was a German machine, and it was just always breaking down. And the sad thing was that by the time he got it out, like got it to market, something else had come out that was more reliable, and he only ended up selling 7. It's too bad. He really thought he was going to make a lot. And then he did invent the scrapbook. Self-adhering stamp book, scrapbook. That's kind of cool. Those are the family steamer trunks from all their trips to Europe. These were some of the souvenirs he got in Africa. Those spears. That even says his name on it. He was widely known to be lazy. Like he invested, like he bought a gold mine with some other guys, and the other guys were the only ones that would work. He wouldn't work. He would just go sit in a saloon and get drunk and tell stories and stuff. But when it came to writing, that's the one thing he was motivated to do. That and the lectures. So this is his desk. Got one of his pipes in there, some of his glasses, his self-filling pen, and over here his corncob pipe. Here they have a picture of him when he was a younger man, and his first job, even though he wanted to be a pilot on a steamer boat, his first job was a printer's assistant. So they actually have kind of a cool thing here where they have a printing plate with his image, and you could just do a rubbing on paper and take it home. How cool is that? This museum was great. I think we'll kind of end it with this. This is kind of fun to see because he got an honorary doctor from Oxford, and he was so proud that anytime he had a big occasion, he would always wear the robe and the cap. And he wore it a lot, including, remember it was at a wedding or something?
To his daughter's wedding.
Oh, yeah, to his daughter's wedding.
So
he wore that.
wedding photos, literally wearing that, so.
Hey, he earned it. I have sampled this life. I feel the same, Mark Twain. Samuel Clemens. So we told you about some of the wallpaper. This was the wallpaper. It's actually on a shirt here. This was the wallpaper in the kids' room. This is the beautiful bee wallpaper that we saw inside of Libby's room, which I thought was amazing. And this is one thing you definitely should have been proud of. Mark Twain became good friends with Ulysses S. Grant. He had a very strong respect for General Grant, and when they met, they became close friends. And when General Grant was in dire need of money to pay his debts, people have been trying to get him to write his story for many years, and it was Samuel Clemens that told him, hey, you got to write your story before it's too late. So he wrote this knowing that he could potentially get himself out of debt, and it got to a point where General Grant physically couldn't write anymore, and the book wasn't done, so Samuel Clemens came to his house every day and dictated the book until it was finished and turned it in 4 days before General Grant's death. And that book is right here. Made $500,000 upon release and got the family out of debt. And if you are a fan of Mark Twain, you want to do something nice, we mentioned that he had a butler here that took care of everything. Apparently he needs a headstone. This is George. George was a good man. He was a second father to the kids, would play with them when Mark Twain wasn't around, and he needs a headstone. So if you can help, please donate to this cause. They're accepting cash here at the museum, but if you can help, please do. We found out they do have a signature drink here called the Huckleberry Fizz, so we got that to try. I hope you all enjoyed our day here at the museum. We'll leave it with this wonderful statue depicting all of the writing of Mark Twain and the characters from his stories, including him and Tom Sawyer. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye.